colleagues, the essence why countries engage with all these human rights mechanisms, including the UPR, is to make an impact on the right borders. If we engage with all these mechanisms, we will not make an impact on the right borders will continue to question the essence of our engagement with the human rights mechanisms. So this is going to dovetail to the next conversation that we're going to have, which is going to be informed by your questions in the room. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to engage with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. I want you to see your applause, so I'm just going to hold the computer up for you. So, Jean, am I hearing you correctly that you have some time for some questions?
Yes, I have some time for questions. Please, if the participants have questions, have concerns, I am at their disposal.
That would be incredible. Thank you. Let's see if there's any hands in the room. Yeah, we've got 2 hands already, so 3 hands, so I'll move the computer to them. Who shall we do first? The back? Okay.
No, I wanted to know, like, at what point, sorry, good morning. So I wanted to know at what point can a civil society or an organization like Civil 264 can hold the government accountable to implement some recommendation. Thank you.
Okay. So let's take 3 questions. I shall do so. The first question was, in which way can an organization like Civic 264 or civil society hold government to account? With your permission, I'll take 3 questions at a time and then give you a chance to respond to all 3. All right.
Thank you. Hello, good morning. Yes, I'm fine. So we've actually had some conversation on email. I think this is Tony Hancock from the Legal Assistance Center. The relationship with government in terms of implementation, if you use the UPR and the ICCPR, for example, together, because we know that there are a number of recommendations that are actually the same. So it's coming from a peer review and from an international level under an international covenant, which we have to, in terms of our constitution, is part of our law. So that was the one question. Sorry, can I ask the next one?
Yes, of course.
And the next one I wanted to ask you is, our government does not accept indigenous as a word, a concept. So how do you then deal with that? You know, because at the end of the day, we've got this covenant, but if you don't actually accede, or you don't use the terminology, then what's the point? So that might be, one of the other questions. Thank you very much. Tom.
All right. So the second question, John, was our government does not use the term indigenous.
Yes. We are only marginalized.
We're only marginalized, we're not indigenous. And so there's resistance towards the term indigenous people. There's a preference for the term marginalized people. Within that context, we just want to even begin to advocate. And the second question I was distracted with. It was rather...
It's because you have the Human Rights Committee under the International Covenants. They also have recommendation that comes from their meetings with Namibia. And a number of them are the same as the UPR. So I'm wondering how can you work with that?
Oh, he got all. Fantastic. Thank you, Jean. Appreciate it.
Civil to also look at it from the perspective of the declaration, the rights of indigenous people. We will continue to engage the government on this. It was one of the recommendations that the government noted. But I can see that there have been some movement, there have been some opening of this space. But we also count on you to see whether the special rapporteur on the rights of indigenous people can also continue to engage the government so that the government can adopt this terminology in its lesson to address the rights of indigenous people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I saw many heads nodding when you were speaking about the knowledge in Parliament on our international human rights obligations. And so I think all of the pieces of advice and recommendations that you just made are very valuable to all of us, and we've all been taking notes. Shall we give the room one more chance for questions? Do we still have some time with you, or are you in a rush? I know that you're very busy today. I'm seeing... Oh, that's very generous. All right. Thank you so much. I see 1, 2, 3 hands. I'm going to go to them now. I don't know if this camera helps. The sound is in the front. Oh, that's the mic. No, but now that's on. Oh, I understand. Okay, got you. Okay, let's try again.
Good morning. I would like to just mention that if they are, civil society do speak together, and some dominant civil society or NGOs are working with the government, but they are preferred. So new ones or specific focus groups do not get the opportunity. It is everything opportunity. It is everything that you said we already agree with. But even if you do go to local agencies like UNESCO, the people locally are also appointed here and very much engaged in government. So that makes it also very difficult to really get a point to an international level, even if it threatens the country as a whole. Say, for instance, like something like climate change or yes. And then the other point is any other link or...
I have really highlighted for me that came out very clear or was very important is the recommendation on access to information and the recommendation of the review of the Ombudsman Act. The review of the Ombudsman Act, I think, is something that is coming a long way. And in your statement, you also said that on the 3rd of July, you will be here engaging the Parliament Committee. Maybe as a way of recommendation also to my colleague from Civic. As an effort to support what you will be doing, it will be good for civil society also from our side, before or after your engagement, that we submit a comprehensive proposal or recommendation that we want to see.
The point that you mentioned, what can you do in order to continue to engage with the government to address issues of human trafficking? It is important for us to be mindful of the fact that yes, Namibia did adopt the Combat of Trafficking in Persons Act in 2018. But the government has also adopted the National Plan, which is going to run from 2023 to 2027. That is going to help to operationalize continue to engage with the government to address some of these issues. The second point I want to mention is that when you document all these cases as civil society actors, bring all these cases to the limelight of the UN human rights mechanisms. You will need to be able to also report on all of these cases so that the UN human rights mechanisms can also engage with the government and then try to get information from the government on steps taken towards addressing some of these issues. But I must mention to you that looking at Namibia compared to other countries in the sub-region, you already have a very amazing legislative framework. There's some progress in place, so I would suggest that you look at that as well. The next point I want to talk about is the Ombudsman Act. Yes, please, we are very, very pleased that that there's progress on this, and then this is a commitment. Please, when I'm there, I'm happy to engage with the civil society actors. If you can help to convene that meeting, I would really appreciate it, so that we can get your thoughts as well on the Ombudsman Act. And we are hoping that the Ombudsman Act is going to be enacted in 2026. The minister committed at the Human Rights Council that the government is committed to enact a revised Ombudsman Act in 2026. And please let us know on that. The point that you raised on what impact was the CSO report. And I don't know, I shared with you the recommendations. I don't know whether you
Yes,
read the recommendations.
I did actually. So,
Look at the recommendations and you look at the report that civil society organizations submitted. Your report was useful because it made an impact because it helped to raise some of the issues. If you look at the government report that was submitted, as you know, I'm not trying to say that this is what happened. When government reports, sometimes they don't call black, they don't call white.
yeah,
They may sugarcoat some of the issues.
yeah,
But in terms of your civil society submission, you were very frank with your submission. You raised issues that if you did not submit that report, those issues would not have been reflected in the recommendations. So that is one issue, which means that you have elevated human rights issues that should have been swept under the carpet if you did not report. So that has been the impact of your report.
absolutely.
But now, that impact should not rest on paper. Now, you need to also engage with the government to ensure that you have helped to elevate these issues. How can we engage the government to continue to push forward for those recommendations to be implemented? The key point that was raised by the colleague, I didn't get her name, but I can see she's sitting in front, wearing a brown jacket, if my color is right.
Gretchen
She
Burmeister,
asked a
yes.
question about when you engage with the UN, there is always a link with the government. I understand your concern, but I will disagree with you a little bit. If you look at UNESCO, for example, UNESCO has Mrs. Eunice Smith, who is an international civil servant. In as much as we have colleagues that are Namibian that are working with UNESCO, as UN colleagues, we have code and conduct that our primary objective is to serve the UN in an impartial and independent way. messaging you want to put out? Who are your allies that you want to work? As you mentioned, yes, this may also be happening in Namibia as well as other countries where I have covered. Governments and states sometimes they'll want to engage with civil society organizations that they have identified as friends of the state. However, it doesn't cancel the fact that we need to ensure that the consultation is supposed to be inclusive, it's supposed to be transparent. From my engagement with civil society organizations in Nigeria through Civil 264, we have always tried to ensure that we organize a very inclusive consultation. We bring on board civil society organizations from a broad spectrum, covering various thematic areas. But one thing that we need to be very sure of and we need to be aware of is the fact that we have this scrambling and grappling for resources. That when civil society organizations are working, some of them are working with an ulterior motive. Because they think that when they're engaged in a certain process, it's going to provide them with an opportunity to get funding. But we need to always be mindful of the fact that as civil society organizations, when you operate like that, you are impacting on your credibility. Because your role is to serve as the voice of the voiceless. And you need to put yourself together. You need to work as a coalition of civil society organizations. You need to ensure that you avoid fragmentation. So this is a responsibility that I'm pushing it back to you, for you to be able to put yourself together, work on various thematic areas. One civil society organization cannot be master of all. You have various thematic areas that you work on, and you have to respect each other's areas of expertise and how you have to engage with that. Because if your house is not clean as civil society actors, when you go to engage with the government is not going to take you seriously. Because you are appearing in front of the government as a bunch of disorganized organizations. So, on that note, I would say that you really need to ensure that you work in a very strategic way and ensure that you advance issues that are also aligned to the national development plan of Namibia. Thank you so much.
All right. John, we had one more question, but I'm aware that you said you're only available until 10 and this is 1 minute past.
I'll take it.
You'll take it, all right. So that's going to be...
You take 3 more if there's more.
Okay, so John is being very generous with 3 more, but I know that we're also encroaching on our program at this point in our tea time. So if we could keep any remaining questions extremely brief. Thank you very much for those points, John. I really appreciate your advice. I wish we could have a lot more time to reflect on all of them. So I'm seeing one hand, and that'll be the last one. Perfect, thank you. And now we do this little trick again. Hopefully it works. I must remember to do that. There you go.
My question is, we have talked about anti-torture legislations and police accountabilities. So I would like to know what mechanisms exist to investigate police misconduct, because people have been beaten and nothing is going to happen with that.
And while I change the mic situation, I just also want to reflect on what you said about the impact of civil society submissions in this process. I'm aware of some very powerful submissions that were made and that can clearly be read as having been taken into account and having influenced these recommendations in a big way. And so I do want to applaud the effort of civil society in the submissions made and to affirm that they clearly have had a tremendous impact. And so these processes that they enable will continue to slowly move things forward. And so then I hand over with that to the question that we had. Thank you. Over to you, Jean.
Thank you so much. That was a very, very funny question.
Yeah.
police
Brutality.
and this is an issue that is not peculiar in the context of Namibia. We also experience this in several countries as well. Within the police structure in Namibia, you also have oversight bodies. But a concern that we have always had is that sometimes these internal police oversight bodies they're not independent because there is challenges on police officers holding their fellow police officers accountable. However, you need to be, as I mentioned to you, you need to also ensure that when there are issues of police brutality, you need to also ensure that you explore the various legal avenues. And I know that this boils down to issues concerning legal representation. I know that in Namibia you have you have national structures that can also help. I know that the Legal Assistance Center has been very, very key on issues on legal representation. But you may also want to explore that as well to see how can they give you assistance on this issue. The next point that we also have to look at is, as I mentioned to you, the parliament can also play a very important role for you to continue to engage with the parliament to ensure that it exercise oversight function over the executive. But please, the one thing I want to mention is that advocacy is not the once-off thing. When there is a case of police brutality, don't sweep that case under the carpet. Advocate on that issue until you see that the government is making some progress on it. And then you also have to, I know when I speak about this, I know that I am not going to get too much approval, but you also have to see how you can engage with the Office of the Ombudsman. The Office of the Ombudsman, I know it has some tools, but maybe those tools are not sharp enough. But it doesn't cancel the fact that it is still an institution that you have to engage with. The next point I want to mention to you is that you can also engage with UN human rights mechanisms. And one of them is for you to be able to submit information to the various special rapporteurs who can issue communications to the government, calling on the government to act on specific cases. This is going to help lectures on your national advocacy initiatives. So these are the various avenues that you have to explore as civil society organizations to try to address issues of police accountability. Thank you.
All right. Jean, thank you very, very much for that. I've got a full room that has been nodding away to your advice and appreciating it. And I think the last point was very important, connecting to people in the room. And so just before we say goodbye to you, I'm going to let Tony Hancox from the LSC just add something to that. Thank you very much again for your time. It's being extended.
Sorry.
No, it's fine, Tony, of course.
Sorry to keep you. And I just wanted to say on that issue, talking about the Ombudsman, we have actually at this point in time commissioned an update to the human rights manual that we have done many, many years ago. So I'm very happy to see that this is happening. I think that the stakeholders are not fully committed, because the first question was, why are we going to protect LGBTIQ people? Because it's not in the Constitution. So we need to work against all of those things. But they are speaking of, when you do the arrests, what kind of, so there is some work being done on it. But yeah, it's probably going to take a while before it's implemented properly. Just so you know, I'm not sure.
All right, yeah. Oh, Jean, you're speaking and we can't hear you. I'm just going to unmute you. I am getting better at this gymnastics. Yes, I think we should hear you again now.
Yes, no, I was saying that I'm so happy with the update that was provided by Tony Hancox. That's a very good point. When we want to address issues of police accountability, we need to to other police officers as well. So I'm going to end on that note, and it is always a pleasure engaging with civil society actors. Unfortunately, in the UN, I did work with civil society actors, so we have walked this path, and I understand where you are coming from, and it is always a pleasure to work with you, and I look forward to joining you in Namibia for us to place the code together, and thank you so much.
Thank you, John, for your time. We will break for tea, and I'll say goodbye to the room, but goodbye to you, Jean, and thank you for your time again, and we look forward to welcoming you at the end of the month. Cheers. Thank you very much. All right, so we are past our tea break by 11 minutes, and we'd like to start on time for our next section of the day. I want to just give a lot of awareness for the amount of time we could actually afford to just this first part of the day. And the amount of discussion that would be valuable to continue at this point. I think all of us are feeling quite stimulated. Jean's got a way of speaking that imbues me with a sense of purpose and drive to go forward. And so let's not lose that momentum. Christy Kilder arrived here with a little stapled collection of points that we can take further. I think that was actually in regards to our next engagement. But even this engagement, if you would like to make any written submissions, as I said, there have been incredible submissions made through the right channels, that people who did go to Geneva to represent their sectoral causes, and that has already made massive impact. But this is not a once-off process. It's every 4-year cycle process, but even within a 4-year cycle, there are many opportunities for us to submit, to make submissions, to push for our causes to be heard. And so this is part of yet another one of those, in which I really encourage you to email us with any priorities that you want to have emphasized in an upcoming meeting with the Ministry of Justice, so that we can say these have been recommended. Which are you going to note? Which are you going to actually be doing something about? And if you're only noting some of them, why? And when are you planning on picking that up? And just asking these questions and keeping our priorities on the stove. I always go for metaphors that I don't know how to finish, but you know what I mean. So please be warmly invited to send an email with anything that you'd like for us to take forward to the ministry. But I am going to just ask for perhaps 1 or 2 comments, if they are in the room, before we go and have a quick tea break and come back for the second part of our program today. Any comments before we break? Yes.
I'm actually representing Africa Achievers Women and conferences. So I'm working now with Women Action of Development because of the gender-based violence issues in Namibia, and police are also featuring and family. So, but we started now to also helping men to understand, like with soft skills, and we're building in emotional intelligence. So there is hope, but those tools are needed for all of us to have peace and, the family unit still together and for prosperity in our country.
Fantastic. Thank you for being here. And I think it was mentioned that the gender-based violence action plan, I'm not sure if that is the correct word, but something to that effect.
Against this gender-based violence where police officers are involved in, it is not being taken seriously by the police commander. So there's a misunderstanding.
I understand.
Miscommunication so far as now the community is confused whether they have to report a gender. If it is happened by the community member, then it is been taken seriously. But
Yes.
when it happens to a police officer
Yes.
doing that, it is not as serious.
Yes.
That is the
And that is a crime, and so we mustn't allow ourselves to be confused. And so I think a part of that question was also addressed before. We have got mechanisms. If police, so assault is a crime, no matter who does it to whom. And so it's not a personal, it's not a civil case. it's a criminal case. And so you are allowed to take it
But
on behalf of someone else. And if they lie to you and say that you're not allowed to, it's your job to take it further. And so there is the Legal Assistance Centre, there is the Office of the Ombudsman. And as Jean said, let's not let these things collect. When police commit crimes, as they do, it's not we need to, each drop in the ocean, each report to the Ombudsman builds up a pattern of behaviour that makes a strong case for us 4 years from now when we take this back. So don't let it rest, and don't let the confusion set in, and don't let the lies fester into confusion in the community. A crime is a crime no matter who commits it. And a crime is a crime against all of us. That's what makes it not a civil case between two people, but a criminal case. Is when you assault her, you've assaulted me too. As a part of this community, you've hurt the community as a whole. That's what a crime implies. And so it is within your right to take it further. And when it's blocked, go take it further and further.
If the office declined to investigate the matter,
So I'm not sure that the Ombudsman Office is mandated to investigate, but they will be recording that, and it does build up a case. And so, as the Ombudsman said a few years back, let's use the systems as though they work until they're proven not to work. And so keep using it, and when it does not work, that is evidence that it does not work, and that's then the next thing to take forward. Yeah. But we can't say that it doesn't work if we haven't tried to use it. Then we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Let's use it to the point of failure, and then use that failure as evidence of the need for change. Yes.
I think it's a little bit linked to that, because I'm certified and we are working with a lot of LGBTI community. And one of our members at Oshikango, he was beaten up and reported case, but station commander was at that time at the station, so he made mockery of this person. And they did not even take up when he opened the case, they did not open the case. So the people protected us, and we went there informed by the police that that there is a certain department of the police that investigate the crimes committed by the police. So I think it's also for us to know our surroundings, what is happening, and then give right information to the people. Because that person was actually, the police was actually suspended, the station commander as well. So we just have to know what is happening around our surroundings as well.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's have some tea and reconvene. Do we want to make the tea break short and start at 10 as on the program? 10? Oh, that's right. That's what I mean. Yes, so shall we start at 10:30 as per the program? See you shortly. Thank you.